Welcome to Scrunchy Time. I'm Nicole Hegsted, your fertility advocate. After 6 years of infertility and 3 miscarriages, I decided that I needed to become the advocate for my own body. If you're exhausted from struggling to get pregnant and want to know more about how I can help, check out my website at www.nicolehegsted.com.
And I'm Bridget May, your children's health expert. My son was born with a heart condition that led to 3 open heart surgeries, cath labs, a tracheostomy, and a ventilator. After being fed up with mixed opinions, I became my children's own advocate. If your child's health is lacking, then check out my website at www.bridgetmay.com to find out more how I can help. Put your hair up and pay attention while we discuss today's hottest topics concerning female hormones and healthy kiddos.
We aren't silky.
We aren't crunchy. We're scrunchy. Hi, and welcome back to Scrunchy Time. So today we have another guest speaker. Our wonderful friend Hannah Fellows is with us today, and we are going to be talking about emotion clearing. So I will just let Hannah take it away and tell us what it is.
All right. So glad to be back here. It's been a while since I was on here the last time. So yeah, really excited about this episode. And yeah, we wanted to talk about emotion clearing, which we all know that we go through many difficult times in our lives, and we experience traumas, we experience negative emotions, we experience so many different things that are unpleasant, or it doesn't even have to be traumatic. It can be just a hard moment or a hard feeling or grief or unhappiness, or even, as we have found out, too much joy. We can talk about that later, but those emotions, those negative emotions, can actually get trapped in our body. And the study of emotion clearing and finding these trapped emotions within our bodies, one of the best books that we have read has been The Emotion Code by Dr. Bradley Nelson. You can find it for free on PDFs. Just search free PDF, The Emotion Code. You will find the book, and you can read it, and he can explain it so much better than we can in a short podcast. But basically, it is based in muscle testing, or applied kinesiology, which is the study of body movements, the electromagnetic currents within the body. We are all connected by energy. We are all made of energy. And those trapped emotions are literally balls of energy vibrating in different frequencies. We all vibrate at a frequency, and we are made of energy, so energy vibrates at a certain frequency. Lower frequencies aren't good, higher frequencies are bad. So those little balls of energy that are trapped emotions can get stuck in our hearts, our knees, our necks, our brains, our wherever. And utilizing those electromagnetic responses with muscle testing to determine disruptions in the body, food sensitivities, supplemental needs, and finding those trapped emotions. That's how we find those trapped emotions, using muscle testing. And so we use that muscle testing to ask a series of questions to find those trapped emotions. We identify them and we release them. Releasing trapped emotions creates a perfect conditions for our body to actually heal. So that's why it is so important to find these emotions, to identify what they are, to release them properly, and allow our body to actually move on. Because that's why they get trapped in the first place, is that we haven't actually processed these emotions fully, completely, and our body still thinks that it needs to deal with them in some way, and it's usually not a good way. It's usually by burying them somewhere, and burying that energy somewhere that causes us depression, anxiety, blocking love and happiness, causing disconnection from others. They can even cause physical pain and even disease. If you may notice that you have a knee pain, you can release a trapped emotion from something. You can find it could be a trapped emotion from years and years ago, and suddenly you'll notice that if you release it, then you don't have that knee pain anymore. So yeah, basically that is the what emotion clearing is and how it affects our bodies. So
It's such an amazing thing. It really is, that our bodies have a way to protect ourselves from
mhm,
from these things, and when we experience that kind of trauma and we can't process it, I mean, imagine how bad it would be if we just allowed that grief to run rampant in our body, and so our body, instead of saying, well, we're just going to let that negative electrical currency run through our body all the time and you can just feel sad forever. No, we're going to trap it and put it away somewhere, and we won't deal with it, so that way you can feel safe. And I think that's just an amazing thing. I really do. I really, really do. And it's important to note too that when we're talking about energy, we're talking about electrical energy. I've had a lot of people, and you probably too have, Hannah, as well, where you start talking about energy and people think you're talking about like spiritual woo-woo stuff, and it's like, no, this is electromagnetic energy that runs in every single atom. And it's really funny too, because then you say to people, we have electricity in our body, and they're like, wait, what? And then you're like, okay, do you remember an atom and the electron and the neutron, and there's electricity inside, and if you split that in half you get a bomb. This is on the atomic level, and we're made of atoms. The atoms make up our cells, and so our cells have energy. And so it's hysterical when you like break it down to that level. Suddenly people understand, oh, this is scientific, but
right.
as soon as we hear, oh, we have electricity in our body, they think, oh, the Matrix, what are you talking about?
No, yeah, I literally started, if I'm describing this to someone, if you just say applied kinesiology, if you just say emotion clearing, etc., you do get a lot of judgment. You get a lot of like, oh yeah, you're one of those people, crazy.
Yeah.
So I started throwing in the word quantum mechanics because I just heard somebody talking about, well, a while ago anyways, heard somebody talking about this, and they mentioned that this is based in quantum mechanics. This is something you could read a book on quantum mechanics and find this information. I obviously have not done that. So I am not a quantum mechanic at all. So, but I like having that word of like, oh, this is like, look up quantum mechanics. If you want to know what this is, just go look up mechanics, because you will find this information. It is legitimate. It is real. Just don't Google it, because then everybody, all that you're going to find is emotion clearing doesn't work. Science has proven this over and over that it doesn't work. It's not a thing. Yeah, kinesiology is dumb and stupid, and there's no way that it could possibly work. So, but the proof of this is all in personal experiences, because you have personal people, real people, personal experiences that have been life changing through muscle testing, through emotion clearing. It's the proof is in the pudding, basically. So
Absolutely.
yeah, science can say whatever it wants to say and whatever it's paid to say, but when you have real people that are having good experiences with this, then it's hard not to be okay with it. It's hard not to.
That's my thing across the board. Is when I was first told even about applied kinesiology back in my teens, I was like, okay. And then they did it to me and it was for supplementation at the time, to see what kind of supplements I needed. And I walked away believing it, because and I'm going to explain in a minute how that's done, but you can't experience it and not believe in it. Like it's one of those things where it is a personal thing.
Right.
And I am a believer in it because of my personal experience with it. I'm not going to sit here and tell everybody you have to do this, even though I think it's beneficial for everyone. Everyone has freedom of choice in this matter. Like, you decide. But I am a firm believer in the whole thing. So actually applied kinesiology, I'll just go into that now. So when you do applied kinesiology, you have someone hold their arm up, and I'm going to bend my arm so you can see, but technically you'd have them hold it out. And then you ask them a question like, do you have a trapped emotion? And then you press on their arm. And if their arm stays strong, then that's a positive electrical current, and that means yes. And if your arm drops, then that's a negative electrical current, and that means no. And the really cool part is you can do this for people. Like you can, so when I muscle test people, I muscle test on my own body and ask my own body those questions for that person. And then, so I can do it long distance wise in that way. But that's basically how it's done, is the electrical current is going through your body, and a strong yes means, or a strong arm means yes, and a weak arm means no. A lot of chiropractors use it. They will, and it's really cool when you see it done this way. This is like the most basic way you can use applied kinesiology, is they will put one of their hands, they'll have you hold your arm out, and then they'll put their hand on a vertebrae and they'll test your hand. And if it's strong, then that means that that vertebrae is strong, because it's creating an electrical current that is positive all the way around. They're creating an electrical loop. But the minute that they hit a vertebrae where your arm goes down, that means that vertebrae needs to be corrected. And it's spectacular to watch that happen as they go through that. Or then sometimes they'll even have like, they'll find a weak vertebrae, but then if they move your leg a certain way, then it completes the circuit, so that the problem is actually in your leg. And it's just really cool. Like they know a lot more. Obviously, chiropractors know a lot more about adjusting your body than I do. I'm not a chiropractor, but it's just cool. I have a chiropractor that does it like that, and it's fantastic, and it's the best chiropractor I've ever been to. He is amazing. Mm-hmm. So it's really the understanding that your body is an electrical current, and it also goes back to a lot of people understand the fact that when you're around electronics, it's physically bad for your health. And the reason for that is electronics give off a positive electrical current, and our bodies are supposed to be in a negative state, a negative electrical state. And that's where earthing comes in, where if you go walk barefoot on the grass or go sit on the grass, you get that negative electric charge from the ground, and you'll start to get healthy again, and you'll start to sleep better again, and all the things will start to fix themselves inside because it's going into that negative electrical current that you need. So really it's just the understanding that your body has that current, and you can ask your body questions and it will answer you based on that current, which is just amazing in and of itself. And as well, this goes back to listening to your body. This goes back to asking your body questions and what it needs. And, I tell all of my clients, like, in some of our first sessions, walk into a grocery store, go to the produce aisle or section, and look around at all the fruits and vegetables. And when your body goes, yeah, I want that, that's what you're craving. That's what you need. That's the vitamins or minerals that you need. And that in and of itself is applied kinesiology on the most basic of levels. Is your body is responding. When you're thirsty, your body is telling you, I'm thirsty. I mean, there are so many things that your body tells you on such a basic level. When you need to go to the bathroom, your body tells you need to go to the bathroom. Like, your body talks to you. And this is just the next step up in listening to your body.
And we aren't taught to listen to our bodies anymore. Like, we are taught and encouraged and, shamed if we don't. You feel a pain or you feel something off, you go to someone else and they tell you what's wrong with you. They tell you what you need. They, write you a prescription that they've written for 1,000 other people that day. It's exactly the same thing as everybody else gets with your symptoms. And so we aren't taught to listen closer to our bodies, to understand, to ask deeper questions, and that's one of the biggest things I have, when you talk to somebody who's been sick for a while, or they've, struggled with something, and they go from a, traditional medicine doctor, and suddenly they go start seeing a naturopath or a chiropractor, they're shocked at how many questions they ask and how deep they go. It's like, okay, it's not, oh, you have pain in your back, here's this pill for back pain. Mm-hmm. The naturopath or the chiropractor or kinesiologist or somebody else like that is going to start, well, what did you have for dinner? What is your water drinking like? What is your daily activity like? What is your, how are you feeling about this? What are your emotions about this? And everything. What vitamins are you taking? Like, it's so many different things. And it's just incredible, like, that difference between holistic medicine and traditional medicine, asking questions about what the body is saying.
It
And
really is. Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, there's so many times where I've been to a traditional doctor and I tell them something like, oh, I've got a pain in my knee. And they're like, oh, well, what is it? There's a joke like, well, it hurts when I do this. We'll stop doing that. Like that's kind of the way that the doctors respond to things. And I've been told so many times, oh, there's nothing wrong with you. You can't get pregnant. We can't find anything wrong with you. Well, clearly there's something wrong because natural order of things, I should be able to get pregnant. Right.
Right.
But then you go to a naturopath and you say, I have a pain in my knee. And they're like, oh, does it also kind of hurt on your lower back? And it's like, yeah, it does. And they're like, oh, well, you have liver issues, And it's like, oh, well, that's kind of important to fix.
Right.
That actually happened to me in my teens. And it's like, oh, okay, come to find out your knee and your liver are connected. I can't remember exactly what organ it was, but, like that's a big deal. And so, yeah, I agree. Like our bodies communicate, our bodies are all connected, and we have specialists now. You have a foot doctor and a heart doctor and a lung doctor, and nobody is talking. And the problem is your body's talking. Your heart is talking to your liver, your knee is talking to your elbow, but the doctors aren't talking, and so it's important.
Yeah. I did want to mention, as you were talking about the method of muscle testing, I know that sometimes that can be hard. There's so many different ways to muscle test, and maybe you were going to get into this as well. But I wanted to mention that in the book, The Emotion Code, the simplest way that he teaches people to test themselves, and I love this, and it's the simplest way that I've ever found. And I teach other people how to do this, not professionally at all, but when people ask, is the sway test. You literally stand, preferably barefoot or whatever, and you center yourself, you get quiet, and you ask yourself yes or no questions. And for the yes question, your body will sway forward. For the no question, your body will sway backwards. And I mean, I've taught this to people who even have known muscle testing, and they experience it for the first time, and they're like, oh my gosh, that was incredible. Like I could feel it in my guts. Like my entire inside was swaying forward or backwards based on that question. And you start with something super simple, like, my name is. You say what your name is, and you'll go forward because that's a true statement. Mm-hmm. And then you say, my name is George, or something. It's completely the opposite, and you'll sway backwards. And that's how I have done so much of the motion clearing and testing, muscle testing for anything. Even with other methods that I like better, I still go back to that sway method of just like, I'm just using my body, and it's just really cool. So I wanted to make sure we mentioned that. So.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I agree. I've done it a couple times, and I've almost fallen backwards a couple times because it's such a strong no. So,
it is. It's so powerful to feel that.
Yeah,
I've gotten to the point, because I've done it so many times. Like and I know we've talked about this before, Nicole, but like I can just be sitting. I don't even have to be standing. I could be laying in bed, and I'll ask those questions. I'll go through something that I want to muscle test or find a trapped emotion or something, and it's the weirdest sensation. And it's probably just because I've done it so much or whatever, but I feel it inside my body. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have to be like this dramatic forward and backward anymore. It's just this like, I don't even honestly know how to describe that feeling of just this powerful push forward or powerful push backwards inside my center.
Yes.
So, I mean, that's just with practice and with doing it so many times, but I just find that incredible that I can be that sensitive now at this point to be able to do that. So
it truly is. And I have the same thing. I use a different technique, but like in my head, sometimes before I can even verbalize the question, because I've already thought the question, I'll already be like, no, or yes, and I'll go ahead and muscle test because it's like, I want to make sure. But like that intuition, that intuitive level is getting so strong where I'll just know, before I even verbalize it. So yeah. So Hannah, what is your, I want to go through each of our personal experiences too with individually, because we've talked so much about how it's important to experience it. So let's share our experiences. So I'll let you start with that.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, basically I started learning about this. I've known about muscle testing in general for years and years. I was probably like 8 years old or so, and a pastor's wife from the church we were going to at the time, tested my family for different vitamins and stuff we needed, and I just thought it was fascinating. Like, I just thought that was the coolest thing. And then, fast forward to this. This was last summer that we started really talking about this and learning more about it. I was visiting my very dear friend in my hometown, who is actually related now by marriage to that pastor's wife that I originally had learned about this from the age of 8, family that I've known forever and ever. But she came to me one day and we were sitting and talking. She's like, okay, I've got something weird to tell you about. And she starts describing everything that we've all, described about trapped emotions and muscle testing. And I'm just like, okay. And this is someone that I trust, like implicitly, I would trust her with my life. So I just listened and absorbed it all. And I was like, okay, there's nothing that I'm hearing that I disagree with or that I have a problem with. So I'm going to look into this more. I'm going to try it, why not? It's really cool. So I went home and I read the book, started trying it out on myself, and she helped me in the very beginning to find, trapped emotions and different things. And it was mind blowing. Like the first few sessions that she did with me, to finding all those trapped emotions, it was stuff that like explained my whole life. She'd find a trapped emotion from when I was a kid. It would find anxiety at different intervals from 5, 6, 8, 10, 12. I was like, yeah, go figure. but all these different things. And then, we forgot to mention inherited trapped emotions as well. That's an important piece of my story as well. You can inherit if a great grandfather or a great uncle, even uncles and aunts, I think we can go as far as that, experiences a trauma and doesn't deal with it and has that trapped emotion, it can get passed down genetically. And you can find those, and it's amazing to find those, because you'll find them from 10, 15 generations in the past, or you'll find them from your grandmother, or you'll find them from your parent. And it's absolutely shocking to find those. And she'd find, we kept finding more and more of those. And it just explained so much about things I'd experienced in the past. And I just felt freer for having seen all of those and dealt with them, and being able to look at those emotions and understand what they were. Number one, sometimes you go through a trauma and you don't exactly know how you feel about it. And that negative trapped emotion, you could think that at the time you felt angry, and what you actually trapped was something like abandonment, something like despair, something like anxiety. You weren't actually angry in that moment. And so being able to look at that and pinpoint an age of like, oh, I remember feeling really angry at the age of 16. Well, that's not what I trapped. I trapped abandonment. I trapped discouragement. I trapped effort unreceived. I trapped all these other things other than what I thought I felt. And so that was so like, should I say as an Enneagram 4? As an Enneagram 4, I love to process things. Like, to other people's demise, I love to process things. It drives my mother crazy. It drives Nicole crazy. She's like, get over it. Come on, let's move on. But I love the process of emotions. I love digging through those emotions. So this was such a good process for me to look at all of these emotions that I never understood growing up as a teenager, looking at emotions trapped from my grandparents and parents and what I was passing on to my child and so many other things. And yeah, and then when I started doing it for other people in my family and seeing their responses to it as well, and being able to, dig through a lot of family drama and family things that, we never really, you don't deal with in the moment, but then being able to go back and be like, hey guys, when we went through this particular thing in life, I trapped this or and you trapped that, and it's been a very healing experience for me and several members of my family and friends, and it just has trickled down incredibly, absolutely incredibly. So, and then going through my miscarriages, it has been so helpful to be able to look into that and almost preventatively, like, okay, I know I'm experiencing grief, so I'm going to make sure I'm continually clearing that grief and that and all of those other emotions that you think you're experiencing grief, and you actually trap effort unreceived and abandonment and all these other things. So being able to dig through all of that, continually and keeping up on it is just so freeing and so healing and so insightful. And yeah, it's made quite a difference in my life, and I know many other people's. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
I agree. Yes, there's so much. I just feel like, I want to say so much right now. So obviously you introduced this to me about a year ago now, I think like early September of last year. And so of course at first I was like, yeah, go ahead and do it for me. Like I wasn't going to do it for myself. I didn't know how and all that kind of stuff. And so when you came back with the first findings of like 5 or 6 trapped emotions, and you were like, girl, what happened to you at 21? And I won't go into what happened to me at 21 because it's very personal, but we spent the rest of the day talking about what happened to me at 21. And I was sold, like from that moment on, like you had no clue that this thing had happened to me. And to be able to muscle test and not know and find all of these trapped emotions and everything from self-hatred to abandonment to effort unreceived. I mean, it was insane, the stuff that you had found, all centered around that time. And that's something I found in my clients too when I emotion cleared them. There are lots of times where I'll come back and be like, so what happened? What's your birth story? Like what happened the day you were born? Because everyone seems to have some trapped emotion on the day they were born. It's been very interesting. It seems like everybody's got like one trapped abandonment. And I don't know if that's from being put in the nursery away from their moms, or maybe the doctor spanked them to get them to breathe, or I don't know, something happened, but then you've got people who have like 20 trapped emotions on the day of their birth. And it's like, okay, something's
Right.
happened here, or I've had lots of, I had a client who said, wow, that's the day, or that was the age where my parents divorced, and I don't know anything about these people's backstory. Like they set up an emotion clearing session with me, and I emotion clear them, and we find 20 trapped emotions in this one age. And so it's extremely powerful and very, very interesting in that. And I totally agree with you on the inherited emotions part. I had trapped emotions on my mom's side and my dad's side. And I can see, like, as soon as I saw which ones were my mom's side and which ones were my dad's side, I was like, this has literally shaped my family history. Like, I can totally see how this is the trapped emotion of this family line, Like, yes, my mom's side are all like really German,
larger people. We turn to food a lot. And I see why now. Like, I see an entire family that's been shaped of like, are you feeling sad? Here is some food, here is some stroganoff and some schnitzel. And it's hysterical because I see that. And then my dad's side, we had a ton of trapped abandonment on his side. And it was amazing because I am fortunate enough that my father and his mother did a ton of research into our genealogy on his side. And so I know people, like I knew who it was talking about when I'd be like going back through the line, and I was like, I knew who the people were and their names and everything. And so, cause I know my ancestors like back to the 1500s. And the first person that trapped this abandonment that had been passed all the way down to me, trapped it in 1510 when he came to America. Wow. Yeah. And it dawned on me, like my own moving, I've moved a lot in my life. And in looking back, when I moved away from my parents, I felt abandoned. And I never justified that because I wasn't abandoned. I left them, So how can I feel abandoned? Well, you still have those emotions of leaving home. And like, I moved like 6 hours away and I was all by myself and all the things that happened with that. And it like, I really resonated with this person I've never even met way back when in the 1500s, that he, of course, chose to leave everything he knew. I mean, imagine leaving your country, sailing across the ocean, ending up in this brand new country. I mean, it's got to be completely foreign. There's no roads. There's no, anything that And he had to have felt abandoned. And that got passed from generation to generation. And I see how that has shaped my family history as well. And so it's just, it is amazing. It is amazing. And I feel like I've been able to go back and heal so many things that I knew were bothering me, things that I didn't realize were bothering me. And I don't know if either of you have ever had that experience where you're just going along in your day and you suddenly remember something from when you were like 13 and you're like, oh yeah, like either that person did this to me or I did this to somebody else and I feel really guilty and I can never go back and apologize. I'm just a bad person. Type 1 over here. Evil, just go die because of that thing you did at 13. So that has stopped for me, actually. Those little blips of like, oh man, that was so humiliating, and oh man, that was so whatever. And I firmly believe that was because I had trapped emotions in my body that I had not processed. And they came back as memories because those emotions are like, hey, I'm still sitting down here in your kidney. Like, you got to deal with me at some point. And I truly am terrified of who I would have become in my older years had I not dealt with this. Like, the amount of angst, I guess, the amount of like heartbreak and haunting sadness that I have dealt with in my life with these trapped emotions that I could never pinpoint. Like, I just feel sad or I just feel depressed. Like, that's all gone away. And I see how that wears on people. And I look at my parents and I look at my grandparents and how people just become like angry and bitter in their older years, and I think that comes from this. I really do. I think it comes from not dealing with these things, and they get trapped and they build and build and build. And then you just become bitter and angry at people and you don't even know why. Like, it's just like, I'm hurting, so therefore you need to suck it up too, and we get that attitude from the older people. And I really think that this is where that comes from. I really do.
Which explains so much. Like, when you think of it in that way, I mean, like, that is how so many people, especially, I mean, we don't want to pick on the older generation, but we can pick on them a little bit. Especially older generations who have gone through so much trauma, like wars and diseases, and they have lost every one of their family members. They're the sole survivor. They have lost children. They've gone through miscarriages without any support because they grew up in, they were having babies in the 50s, you know, and on and on and on and on. They, you know, they watched their brothers in arms die in Vietnam, and they come to, you know, our generation and younger generations with this attitude of, well, I suffered, I survived, you will too. So I'm not going to help you. I'm not going to have any compassion for you. And that's just how it's going to be. And I mean, and that's within saying people our age can be exactly the same way because, and younger people, and it doesn't matter what age you are, you can still be a jerk about helping people and having compassion for people. But I do think that it goes back to, you've experienced trauma in your life. You've experienced hurt and these horrible emotions, and you haven't dealt with them because you've been told by every other emotionally constipated generation to suck it up and get over it and move and just deal because everybody else has had to as well.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of dealing with those emotions, understanding that you have been hurt, you have been through trauma, clearing those emotions if you know about this and you agree with it, and if not, just acknowledging the fact that this happened.
Mm-hmm.
You felt this way. You don't have to hide it. You don't have to feel sorry for it. You don't have to feel weak for it. You just have to deal with it and then move on. Not move on before you deal with it.
Yeah.
And then turn around and have compassion for people who are going through the same things, in an effort to make sure that they don't become bitter people like you are.
Right.
Yeah. And just continuing the cycle. Stop the cycle.
Mm-hmm.
Stop the cycle. Be who you needed when you were going through that trauma. Maybe had you come home from Vietnam and had a warm welcome and a loving family that helped you through your PTSD, you wouldn't be a bitter old man standing on your yard shooting at kids in your yard. You would have compassion for other people.
Right.
I mean, and maybe if you were a woman who had gone through your miscarriages with love and support and kindness, and somebody who told you, well, it wasn't actually a baby. If you didn't have that person that was standing there telling you, well, it wasn't actually a baby, or you weren't far enough along, or you didn't tell anybody because you feared judgment or whatever, if you'd actually had support and love, you wouldn't be telling another generation of people to just get over the loss of their baby. You know, I mean, we could take 100 examples like that, and the bottom line is stop the cycle.
Yes.
Deal with your emotions. Be who you needed to be when you were going through that trauma. And maybe for future generations won't have so many trapped emotions to deal with. Maybe our kids won't have so much crap to sort through in their 20s and 30s.
Absolutely.
You know, maybe
Absolutely.
they won't have to sit on a podcast talking about all the trapped emotions that their parents passed on to them.
Absolutely. You know, I know, Bridget, it's your turn here, but I'm going to add one more thing too before I switch it over to you. I grew up in a family that was very anti-emotions, very suck it up and take it like a man, very, you know, oh, does that make you feel sad? You know, like just very much that way. And the emotion was happiness and there was anger. And anger was okay because anger is masculine and anger is tough. And the problem with sadness is it's not tough and masculine and strong. And so what ends up happening is people get angry. And in the end, you always have an emotion. There is always you are always in an emotional state. There is always an emotion that describes your mood. If you're sad, you need to deal with that. If you're angry, you need to deal with that. And if you don't, then you just end up being angry all the time because you have all these emotions that you're repressing, and it makes you angry when you repress your emotions. So I just want to throw that out there for people who are listening to this and being like, oh my gosh, you guys are a bunch of like sissy woo-woo people. Like, no, I almost feel like it's stronger to face these emotions. It's stronger to look the grief in the eye and say, I'm going to grieve today, and you will not get the better of me because I'm going to feel my grief all the way through until it's done. That's the strong one.
So
It's easy to ignore stuff. It's easy to bury stuff. It's easy to just get mad at people when they tell you to deal with your emotions, or to tell you to be kind, or tell you to not be hurtful or bitter or angry. It's easy to just be like, you're a snowflake, move on. You know, I grew up and we didn't talk about such things. You know, it's easy to say those kind of things. It's easy to just ignore what's going on. It's hard to sort through it. It's hard to dig through crap in your heart. It's not for sissies, and it's not for snowflakes. That's for certain.
Absolutely. I agree. Okay, Bridget, go ahead with your experience. We have like totally dominated this episode.
No, that's okay. No, I mean, I don't want to say much either, because you guys you just did such an awesome job. There was nothing for me to interject on. So you guys are doing great. So, but I do think it's important to share at least one of my kids' experiences with it. Yeah, so not to echo like everything you said, but I went through the same thing. Like, you know, it totally like took me back. So I don't do it. I don't emotion clear myself. Nicole still does it for me because I'm lazy, and it's so much easier just to be like, hey, could you do this again sometime? So she's the one who kind of introduced it to me after Hannah talked to her about it. And yeah, I was totally the skeptic too, of just like, okay, yeah, sure. Well, I guess it can't hurt, you know, what's it gonna hurt if she does this? And she did the same thing. She came back with instances I knew I was struggling with in my life. And I know I had never talked to Nicole about it. Like all the things we talked about. And I know we've never talked about that, you know, because it was buried. And so I didn't talk about that. So it's, for me, it's done all the same things. I've worked through things that I never would have worked through before. I never would have changed. It's helped me. Another thing I know we've talked about with all of us, it's helped us, at least me and Nicole, it's helped us be more empathetic by addressing those emotions and being more sympathetic to other people. Because I grew up in the same, like, not so much drill sergeant, like, suck it up, but we didn't talk about things, you know? And so, like, to now be able to talk about emotions and recognize them and be like, I'm feeling sad. Like, you know, like, it's huge, you know? Like, you know, and I grew up in a household, you know, when you watch Sesame Street and they talked about emotions, you're like, oh my gosh, seriously, you know? And it's a big deal. It's a really big deal. So, but yeah, like, just with all of that, moving past everything that's happened in my life, it's helped immensely. I would not be the person I am now doing the things I'm doing. So, but Nicole also cleared all of my kids. And the biggest one is Millie, which I know if you've been listening, you've heard her story a little bit. So the reason we left my husband was because he had sexual desires towards her, and I, you know, don't know if he did anything to her or not, but, you know, she, as a child, was always very withdrawn and pulled back from me, especially. Like, we did not have that connection that I like had with my son and stuff like that. And I always thought that was weird, you know, but, you know, second child, all the things, she didn't get as much time as he did, you know, just kind of chalked it up to personalities and whatnot. And it was literally the day Nicole emotion cleared her. I mean, it was within, you know, 24 hours, a switch was flipped and she opened up. She started talking. She was happy. Like, she was not happy before. Like, she just has grump face, you know, like she is resting bitch face all the time. Like, that is that was her personality. So you know, and she just totally came out of her shell. You could tell, like, there was something there, and something happened, whether it was feelings, the way she felt, the way she was treated, all of that, it was gone and it was released, and she wasn't holding that in anymore. So she's a totally different child now, and for it. So yeah, it's just been amazing, and she's just blossomed and bloomed since. She's outgoing and happy and like all the things. You'd never know it was the same little baby. So yeah, that's kind of our biggest story with it all. So
I think correct me if this was wrong, but I think the one thing that you said she started doing was singing.
Yes,
And that
she
thought
did.
that was so that like made me cry when I heard that. I was just like, oh my gosh, like you go from not singing, not talking to now she's dancing and singing, and it gives me chills to even think about it again. So yeah.
Yeah, the other thing with her too, and I know you mentioned this was possible, is she was always like super tubby baby, super tubby, and especially in her belly, like, you know, abnormally she held on to weight there, and just, you know, and I always chalked up to cute chunky kid, even though I'm tall and skinny, my husband was tall and skinny, and all of our other kids are tall and skinny, you know, like. And that was another thing, is she thinned out and lost that extra weight and stuff too. So, you know, she was harboring it there as well. And I think that's where the trapped emotion was in her stomach. I feel like there was,
I think it was too.
we had, because that was one thing we noticed, because then she started to like lose that. And so there was also physical signs that something was released as well. So.
Yeah, and you can store it in your fat, in your muscles, in your bones, in your womb. I've had most of my clients obviously have stuff trapped in their womb from miscarriages or just infertility in general, where they can't conceive. So yeah, I had one client that got pregnant like a month after I finished emotion clearing her. So there's a lot that can go on there. The Bradley Nelson, the guy that wrote the book, he says that not every person that has a trapped emotion has cancer, but in every single instance of cancer that he has ever seen, there was always at least one trapped emotion in that area, wherever the mass is.
Right.
And it makes sense, because those things aren't supposed to be there. You know, you think about trapping anger in a certain part of your body for years and years and years on end. What's it going to do to that part of the body? It's going to make it angry. So
right.
So the biggest reason we're doing this episode is I'm announcing that I have a one-on-one program where I offer emotion clearing to my clients, but it's also a standalone. So I don't just require, it's not just for women who are struggling to get pregnant. Normally that's the only people that I work with, but anyone who wants to do emotion clearing with me can sign up separately from that. And it's $20 a session, and you can either schedule it to where we do it on a consistent basis, or you can schedule it as you want to do it. And it's just, like I said, $20 a session, and we go from there. So the way I do it is you schedule an appointment. I spend an hour before our call going through all of them and emotion clearing everything I can find. And then we spend an hour on the phone talking about it. And the only frustrating part about the program is I can't tell you how many sessions it'll take. I had a client that it literally took 2 sessions and she was completely clear. She was more of I'm a tough person anyway, and I don't have a lot of, emotional problems. And then I've had people that it took me 20 sessions and they were more emotional. So it just depends on where you're at and how many you've got and what your body is willing to give up. I test until your body or my body says no more, because there's only so many that you can process at a time. And so with each trapped emotion, I'll ask, can we clear another trapped emotion? And there comes a point inevitably where your body says, no, I can't get rid of any more today. So that's my program. If you're interested in signing up for that, just go to www.nicolehegstead.com and go to my one-on-one programs and you can sign up there. There's a link. I'll also put a link in the show notes to that. So yeah, I think that's everything that we wanted to share today. Is that this ended up being a super long podcast, but it was really good. And I think it's important that we talk about this. So.
And I'm sitting here thinking, oh my gosh, we forgot to talk about 95 other things. Like there's so many.
There's a lot here
that we could have talked about, and so many stories to share, and aspects, and oh my gosh, we'll have to do emotion clearing 2.0. So.
So if you want to know more, sign up for emotion clearing and we can talk about it more.
Absolutely.
I can share it. So. Cool. All right. Well, thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you back in a couple weeks.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us on today's podcast.
If you'd like to know more about our programs or watch the podcast in video form, you can visit our websites,
where we also share links and resources concerning the different topics that we have discussed.
Check me out at www.nicolehegsted.com.
And check me out at www.bridgetmay.com. See you next time.